Hello everybody. Today I'm going to show you how to do a very quick abstract in acrylic. A lot of you ask me how to do abstract paintings, and this is just a really simple way to create something really quickly without too much thought, and it's just about line and shape really, and colour. I've just got a A5 piece of acrylic paper, and I've undercoated it using a little bit of watercolour, or you can use watered down acrylic in a pale orange, and I've let that dry thoroughly. And then I've taken various strips of masking tape. I've cut them up very thin and left some thick, and I've just randomly put them down in a pattern. I was going to choose something like the roof of my greenhouse as inspiration, but I thought you may not have a greenhouse or whatever, but you can loosely link it to some sort of linear structure. But to begin with, just play about with shape and colour. So once you've got your masking tape stuck down, make sure it's really adhered to the paper, and if you feel like you can stick the paper down around the outside, you can also use canvas if you want to, and you can do the same thing with the canvas. Just make sure that when you've done the undercoat that it is completely dry before you put the masking tape on top. And if your masking tape is extra sticky, then just pat it off on an item of clothing before you stick it down. Sometimes it does, especially the sort of decorator's tape and stuff like that, tends to be very, very sticky. And especially if you're working with paper, acrylic paper, then it may pull some of the paper away. So I just pat it off a little bit on my clothing and then I stick it down. If you're working on top of canvas, you've no need to worry about it. And you can also get low tack masking tape and frog tape and stuff like that, which works in curves, which is quite cool. Okay, so first of all, brushes. Acrylic brushes are generally white in colour, and will be slightly harder, and that's so that they carry the thick paint really well. I've got a huge amount of different acrylic brushes, from student range to professional, and they all work, reasonably well. I've also got some decorators brushes that I use, but because I'm working on a fairly small scale here, I'm just going to use one of these Winsor & Newton brushes, size 8. That should be a good enough size to cover sort of shapes of this size. I've also got a range, so because I've gone for orange, I'm going to go for a complementary colour. So the complementary colour of orange is a blue tone of some kind. So I've got a range of blue colours here. These are pre-mixed, I've used them before, and I keep them in these photographic containers because they've got airtight lids. So, which is a really good idea if you're mixing your own colours, to have a container that you can decant them into so that you don't have to throw them away. So I've got a range of blue shades. I don't know whether you can see them in there, but I'm hoping that you can. Pale blues, which I've mixed myself. I've also mixed a grey tone, which sits on the blue side. So it's a little bit of grey paint. That's black and white mixed together with a little bit of blue in it. And then I've got some tubes of, this one is opaque blue turquoise acrylic studio paint. And then I've got some crown match pots, which I picked up for 10p from B&Q. So they're just as good. They won't last forever. I mean, if you're going to sell a painting on, then you might want to consider using more professional paints, but these are good enough for any kind of practice work or something that is not hugely important. And then I've got a sort of purple lilac-y, it's actually pale violet acrylic from Winsor & Newton, just to give us a lighter colour but in a slightly different colour. Okay, so I'm just going to randomly pick up one of the blues, and I I'm not using too much water at this stage because these are already very liquid, and one of the main faults with acrylic painting is using too much water. So use the tube, the paint straight out of the tube, and try not to add any water into it. The only thing that you're doing when you're adding water is you're watering it down, so it makes it thinner. And that means that you'll just have to put more coats on, which is a waste of time and energy. So with the masking tape, if you paint from the masking tape into the area, it's less likely to bleed on you. So from the masking tape into the area, rather than outwards like that, you'll get less of the paint going underneath the tape in the areas. Like you can see there's a little shadow, and it's telling me that that bit has lifted slightly, which means that the paint might go underneath it. So again, I'm just going to go to a different area now. I'm going to start on the masking tape and paint inwards like so. And it's another beautiful day here in Llangadog. The sun is shining. It's supposed to be about 21 degrees today, and the birds have been singing away since the early hours. And again, just move over to a different shape, paint from the outside in. And then once you've got one colour down, I like to work in threes. I mean, you can always go back. Wipe off the excess paint either back into your pot or onto your palette, and then you've got a reasonably clean brush, and then you can wash it off, and it won't discolour your water too much for the next tone. So, and then once you've washed your brush off, make sure you wipe it off on the edge of your water pot and try and get rid of as much of the paint as possible. And now I'm going to go into this lighter tone here. Again, make sure it's mixed. I'm just mixing this up because this hasn't been used for a while. And then choose an area, work from the outside, and you can see that this is much paler in colour, and you can see some of the, oops, I've gone over the edge. You don't need to worry about that because you'll be painting over it in acrylic. So this is the benefit of using acrylic paint, is if you make a mistake you can paint over it. So that's quite pale, as you can see, and the orange tone is coming through. So just add a little bit more paint, painting from the outside in if you can. And you can see that there are lots of lines there now. Now, if I just keep adding paint, those lines will just continue to be around. So the best thing to do is to wipe your brush off so you've got rid of most of the paint, and this is how you make a flat surface, and just lightly go over the top like that and remove those lines. Now, if that then is still too pale, what you'll need to do is dry that off and then put a second coat on once it's dry. So I'm going to move on, and so from the masking tape into the centre, and then make sure you've got nice even coverage. Wipe off the excess paint onto your pot or onto your palette, and then go back in and just smooth the lines down. You want, ideally with this sort of abstract, you want nice flat, well, as flat as possible, areas. And the only way to do that is by either having a nice thick opaque colour which doesn't have any transparency, or to do several layers. So you can see that this paint here is very transparent, so I'm just wiping off. Again, wipe the brush off and continue to just even those lines out you're almost using a dry brush just to even those lines out. Okay, so now I've done my 3. I'm going to wash off, wipe off so that there's no excess paint on the brush, and then back into a slightly different tone of blue. Give it a good mix. And again, outside in, like this. Now I've just gone for orange and blue because they're colours that I enjoy using. It's entirely up to you. You could do a rainbow effect if you wanted. You could use all the colours that are on your palette or that you've got in your collection. It's entirely up to you, but it's nice to have some sort of colour theory going on. So if you've got red, yellow and blue as your primary colours, then if you mix red and yellow together, you get an orange. And then the complementary to that is what's left. So you've got blue. So it's a variety of blue tones. And in the same way, so there's a 3 gone down again. I'm washing my brush off. And I'm going to go in for a grey now. So in the same way, if you mix a red and a blue together, you get a purple, and the complementary to that would be your yellow. And in the same way, if you mix your yellow and your blue together, you get a green. Then your complementary to that would be your red. So it's kind of nice to pick complementary colours. Or you can do a range of tones in one colour. That's quite nice. So you could do a range of red tones or yellow tones or blue tones, that sort of thing. That also works really well. I've just picked up this grey tone here, and the grey is actually going down quite nicely. But like I said, if it ends up looking a bit patchy, then you can always go back over at the end and put another coat on top. It's really up to you how flat you want these areas to be. So I'm just going to do this as quickly as possible now. So I'm into this crown paint stuff. And I'm just going to take this straight out. Now this is another grey tone. So again, I've washed my brush, wipe it off, wipe all the excess water off. I'm lazy, so I'm just going to squeeze it out of the top and put it down on the paper. So outside in. And this is quite a nice meditative practice. For a situation like we're in at the moment. There's not a huge amount of thought going into it, but it's quite rhythmic, and also creates a really lovely piece of artwork quite quickly. Something that you could possibly photograph and reproduce on cards or prints or whatever. You could use it as a base for another painting. You could work on top of it later on or something like that. It's also a fun project to do with, well, all age ranges. Oops, that squirted out a bit on my finger then. It's gone a bit liquidy, it has. Needs a bit of a mix, I think. So you can see that's a little bit patchy, but I'm not too bothered about that. I'll put the paint over there. I'm going to go into this this blue colour now. And you can see that this turquoise is really striking. So I might use a bit more of this because I've got a range of fairly dark tones now. I've wiped my brush clean and I'm going to go into it straight out of the tube. But because it's a nice vivid colour, I might use more of this now on more of the sections, because I've got a fairly dark, and you can see because of the quality of it, even though it's a studio acrylic, it's still a good quality paint. It's coming out a lot thicker. So even in this short space of time, the acrylic that I painted a few minutes ago is already dry. However, just be careful where you're putting your fingers while you put these layers down. I hope this is still in shot. Try not to get too many of the same colours next to one another. That's a bit thick, so I'm just going to add a touch of water in. Now, when you add water in, just be really careful. What happens when you add water into acrylic is it tends to move, it becomes slippy. And if you've got any colours underneath as well, it will bring those colours up on you. So just be really careful with the amount of colour you add in. I spend a lot of my time telling people to just use the paint straight out of the tube or straight out off the palette once you've squeezed it onto the palette and mixed it, rather than trying to sort of thin it down. The only time really that you would use a great deal of water with acrylic paint is if you were using it in a sort of glazing method. So like we've worked with in watercolour in my other tutorials, you thin the acrylic down with water and you would use it like a glaze, and that's almost like a thin wash over the top of something, or even underneath to block out areas of colour. So you can see this building up, and some of you may or may not know that if this is becoming a little bit slow, then you can forward through using your scroll button underneath this video. So you can forward through and reverse the tutorials, speed them up, slow them down, so that you don't have to watch me slowly blocking these colours. Although some of you might enjoy that. It's just nice to watch sometimes, isn't it? So like I said, I'm going to use a little bit more of this blue because I'm enjoying this turquoise blue. And it's painting on really nicely, but I'm just being careful. Like, I don't want to put turquoise here because there's already turquoise there. So I'm going to go up here. I'm trying not to put the same colours next to one another. There's a patch here that I could probably get away with. The other thing you can do as well is, if you've got a hairdryer to hand, is to just dry the layers off really quickly. So have I got any other spots that I can put this in? No. Oh, there's a little spot up there that I could use. No. Right, okay. So I'm going to try and get the lid off of this purple. Oh, hang on a minute, it might come out of the lid. When you have old tubes of paint like this, often you may have left a little bit of lumpy paint on the top. It just peels off like so. And I can feel that the tube is sort of half full. So I'm just going to shake it down and try and get some out of the top, but because I don't think I can get the lid off. No, hang on a minute. If I just shake it, bear with me for a second. And yeah, there we go. It's coming out now. So again, I've wiped my brush off. And I've got a nice clean brush, nice and dry, and I'm just going to work out of the tube again because it saves me having to squeeze out onto a palette, and because I know I don't want to mix the paint, it saves me having to wash up, pour paint down the sink, etc, etc. So I'm not far off now, and I've quite enjoyed doing this myself. I haven't done this sort of thing for a while, so it's been lovely. So, as some of you may know, but others might not know, I teach in Carmarthen at the Community Education Centre. That's in Carmarthenshire in Wales, for those who don't know where that is. And I've got 75 students at the moment, all of which are now isolating at home because of this coronavirus. So we were closed down 2 weeks ago, and so that's when my home tutorials started. Just really so that we could all keep in touch and also continue to paint, because I know that it's quite important for people who are used to painting regularly and those who aren't used to painting regularly to keep up the practice, but also for mental health. We all know that painting is very therapeutic and essential for our well-being, and it's been really lovely to keep in touch with students, both old and new, because I've had some students using my tutorials that are no longer able to come to classes, even without the situation that we've got here. Either they've moved away or have become unable to get into Carmarthen for one reason or another. So it's been nice to hear from old students as well as continuing to work with new students. And also I've got some new students through this. Students from my village and the local area around here, those who normally work, which has been really lovely. So people who can't make my classes because they're in the daytime have been joining in, which has been lovely. And I've been doing the same thing because I've been doing yoga classes with Sian Hurd, who lives just up the road from here. So I've been taking advantage of the fact that I'm not actually physically at work and that I'm able to do classes during the day as well. So that's been really amazing. Oh, I've missed one bit. You probably all spotted that. So this situation, even though it's horrific, has actually meant that some of us have been able to communicate with each other when we wouldn't normally be able to. So that's been wonderful. So there we have it. I think that's it. Oh no, there is, yeah. Well, I think I've got them all. Can anybody see any that I've missed? Nope. Okay, so ideally, dry this off. I'm just going to put the hairdryer on. It's going to be a bit noisy just for a second. Okay, so when it's roughly dry, I mean ideally completely dry, you can start peeling your masking tape away. Now, if you find at this stage that some of the areas are patchy, then just put another layer of paint on top. You can see that this one is a little bit, there's a few lines there. However, because of time issues, I'm not going to do another layer. I'm just going to peel it off so you can see the result. Okay, so carefully now go in and start to peel back the little pieces of masking tape. And again, don't worry too much if your edges are a little bit rough. It doesn't matter, because with acrylic paint you can go back in and you can just go up and go off and neaten them off. Just go carefully, because if you don't, then you will tear, especially if you're using this acrylic paper, you will tear the paper from underneath, and we don't want that to happen. However, if it does, it doesn't matter, again, because you can just take your original colour and just go over the top of it. So you can see there's a tiny bit of paper just come away there. It may have been that that was not completely dry when I put it down. Oops. And you can see there's another tear there. So I'm just going to carefully go to the back and just tear from the other side. Just go in really carefully. Like so. So again, if you want to, you can forward through this. You don't have to watch me removing all the tape. You can sort of have a reveal at the end. Just go to the end of the tape and you can see how it looks, and hopefully there won't be too many tears. Oops, that bit's gonna go. So I'm going to tear from the other side, just carefully. The slower you do this, the less likely it is to pull off the paper. Ooh, let's see, there's a little bit there and there's a little bit there, as you can see. So ideally, if you've got low tack tape, that would be the better tape to use. However, if you're like me and you've got mountains of normal tape and you want to use it, then use it. Just like I said, just pat it off onto your clothing. However, the other thing to remember is if you're doing it on canvas, you won't have the same problem. So canvas paper or canvas itself will not tear. Like I said, this is acrylic, what is called acrylic paper, and it was just a bit of scrap which I wanted to use up, and really for this demonstration it was enough to, that bit's going to come up there, so I'll start from the middle and peel from the outside. That's it. Ooh. That's coming. So you can see that some of the paint has gone under the tape a little, but we can always go back over that. Oop. Another time. I just realised I missed a bit. Oh no, that was actually a piece that I peeled off, so that's all right. I thought I'd missed that bit there, but I haven't. And now you can see as it's starting to come away that it's starting to look quite nice. Am I pulling it there? Yeah, I'm pulling it a bit. Oops. Oh no. Yeah. I'm just going to pull that bit off there. That bit's come up. I can see that that's torn just in there. I will show you how to sort out these little areas that have have bled or where they've torn in a minute once I've got this masking tape off. Ooh, that just tore there, but actually it made quite a nice natural line of itself. Ooh, that's quite a big tear there. Must have been very damp underneath that bit when I put it down. Oops. Okay, nearly there. Sorry that took so long. Peel this bit off. It's my fault really for putting so much tape on. Right, are we done? I think we are. Right, okay, so you can see that because I used paper that it's torn a bit, and I did this on purpose so I could show you what to do about it. So I'm just going to go and get some glue. Right, so I've got some Pritt stick here, or you can use some PVA. Oh, you wouldn't have to do this if you were using canvas, but if you literally just fold up the flaps, put a little bit of glue on, stick them back down like that. Da, da. Okay, so that's one problem solved. And then the other problem is if you've got some of the paper that it's come off here, and you can't replace it. So I've just got the same orange colour that I used earlier on. I'm just going to water it down a bit because this was watercolour. And you just go over it with a little bit of water like that. And you can sort of neaten patches up. Just wet the whole area like that. A little bit of watercolour. So if you undercoated it in acrylic, you just do the same thing. And it looks wet now, but once it's dry, it'll look dry, obviously. Okay, just wet the whole area so you don't get sort of lines happening. So again up here. So repeat the exercise until you're happy, like so. Okay, and you just cover up any little problems. And in the same way, if you've got bits that have bled from the acrylic part, you just take up your acrylic and you just block those in and neaten them up. It's really unlikely that you'll go the whole way with this painting without having some little bits here and there just to touch up. So there's a little patch. Oh, actually I picked it up on my finger, look, and put it there. So even with the patchy bits on the main body of the work, but just be careful not to put it here like I just did. So I'm just going to try and get that. I don't think I'll get that off, but never mind. Okay, so there's your little acrylic abstract. Have fun, have a go, and just see what you can come up with. The results can be really beautiful. Another thing that you can do to enhance things, if you've got them, if you've got Sharpies or these pens which I use called Posca pens, they're really excellent. And what these are acrylic paint in a pen form. So they have a small nib on. However, you do get finer ones with smaller nibs and real hunky chunky ones with big nibs. So what you can do is if you pick up a colour of some sort, give it a good shake. These are liquid acrylic in a pen, so sometimes they settle inside. So they act like the old silver markers. So you can then either leave your painting as it is, or you can sort of go in. You can add different layers using the normal acrylic paint. So there's no reason why you couldn't go in and pick up, say, the blue tone and go in and put extra marks in. So you could do something like this. Yeah, and you could repeat that exercise on other areas, or you could use the marker pen like I said. So just make sure that when you use your marker pens that the paint underneath is completely dry. So here there's a little tear there that I should have repaired. Maybe I'll do it here. Right, so you could say go on the inside like so, and put an extra shape in, and then just build it up. It really depends how much detail you want to put in. Okay, so these are two suggestions. So you can work on top, or you can work using line on top. So have a go, enjoy. I know that this has been a fairly long tutorial, but you know, fast forward through bits so that you don't have to watch the whole thing, and like I said, leave comments in the comments box below, and subscribe if you want further information, and also share these tutorials with everybody that you know that enjoys art or doesn't enjoy art and wants to take up painting. Okay, thanks for watching.